We are on the Mishnah on Yud Gimel Amid Aleph. First Mishnah we're learning as a schus for Shlema for Ilan Chaya Baserach. The Mishnah says Ish Kaidem Leisha. We're going to go through all the Kedimus. Once we said Tadav Shein Tadav Kaidem and Kadav Shein Kadash Kaidem. Now we're going to apply it to personal Kedimus between one person and the next. So Ish Kaidem Leisha Lahachayos Lahashav Aveda. A man comes before a woman. A man is mechayiv in all the mitzvahs, which a woman is not. So therefore, he has kedima lahachayos. Hachayos in this context, it's a little schwer because we know a woman when she's captured, we have to save her first because of the possible she could be violated. So they say this means lahachayos, and it can't mean as far as providing food. A woman gets food also because it's hard for her to go ask for tzedakah. Say lahachayos means literally if the lives are in danger. Returning an aveda, you return to a man before an isha. But isha as far as clothing, when she's captured, like we said, because there's a problem of violation. If there's an issue of men being violated, that's a bigger bizayin for a man to be violated with mishkav zachar than an isha, so therefore the man comes first under those circumstances. Tanarabah, hayahu va'aviv v'rabi b'shevi. If a man and his father and his rebbe were all captured, and he only has enough money to ransom one of them, hu kaidem l'rabi. First he has to chayecha kaidem. First you ransom yourself, even before his rebbe. The rabbi kaidem l'rabi. If you have enough money for two people, he does himself and his rebbe, and then his father. Imay kademis l'kudam, and his mother comes before all of them, like we said before, captured, worried about violation, so a woman comes first. Chacham kaidem l'melech. A chacham comes before the melech Yisrael. A chacham comes before the king of all the Yidden. Chacham shemeis, and ein lanu kiyotze by melech Yisrael shemeis kol Yisrael bruyim l'malchus. The reason is because a chacham, he can't be replaced. He's irreplaceable. It's not just like you can hire another rebbe. Well, a chacham over here, I think, means the gadol hadar. So it's not. There's not. As we know, there's this kanu hadaris. The capability of Talmidei Chacham goes down. So his replacement is not going to be his equal. But a melech can be anyone. Melech kain l'kain gadol. The melech comes before kain gadol. Shneimar v'yemer hamelech. The king said to them, take from amongst the servants of your master, referring to himself. And he was talking to the Kohen Gadol, and he said, take from my he called himself Adonechem, that he was their master. So you see that the Melech is before a Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol kaidem l'navi. Kohen Gadol comes before a Navi. Shneimar Umashach oisay sham tzadak hakayim v'nasan hanavi. This was, I believe, this was by David HaMelech. So David had told them the Kohen Gadol. He called him Adoni, and then he said that he was being Moshech. He was making him into they anointed him, and it says. Tzadik HaKayin was the Kohen Gadol, and Nasan HaNavi was a Navi. Hiktam Tzadik l'Nasan. So he called Tzadik. He said the Kohen Gadol comes before a Navi. It said, listen, Yeshua HaKayin HaGadol, he was the Kohen Gadol, you and your friends, and who are his friends? Yachal had Yoitis. Maybe his friends are Yoitis. Tamalem, Anshe Moivis Hema. Call them Anshe Moivis, men who do wonders. Ein Moifis el Navi. Moifis is a reference to Navi Shnema, but not on Alecha Oisay Moifis. I'm going to place on you a Ois or a Moifis. That's a reference to a Navi. Mashuach b'Shem HaMishcha Kaidem l'Meruba B'Gadol. A Kohen Gadol who was anointed with the oil with the Shem HaMishcha. He has priority over a Kohen Gadol who didn't have the Shem HaMishcha. And there's a Kohen Gadol who, even though he didn't get Shemin HaMishcha, he goes before the Mashiach, the Kohen Gadol, who has passed from his position. He's no longer an authority. Machmas Kiryeh, a Kohen Gadol who lost his position because he was a Keri, which is a temporary reason. Mashiach she'avar machmas kiryoi kaidem la'avar machmas mumai. And a Kohen Gadol who lost his position because temporarily goes before a Kohen Gadol who lost his position permanently because of a mum. Avar machmas mumai kaidem mashuach mulchama. A Kohen Gadol who had got a mum, he has precedence over a Kohen Gadol who is just appointed. He's not really a Kohen Gadol to do the avodah. He's just a Kohen Gadol to go out to mulchama. Mashuach Mulchama Kaidem L'Skan. Kohen Gadol comes before the assistant Kohen Gadol. Skan Kaidem L'Amrachel. And the Skan Kohen Gadol comes before Amrachel. My Amrachel. What's this Amrachel? Amrachel is the Amar Kula. It means somebody who is the administrator. He tells everyone what to do in the Beis HaMikdash. Amrachel Kaidem L'Gizbar. The administrator comes before the treasurer. Gizbar Kaidem L'Roish Mishmar. The Gizbar comes before. There were 24 mishmaros of 2 weeks each. They did the avodah for 2 weeks. So the head of a mishmar, there were 24 roshei mishmar. Rosh mishmar kaidem rosh beis av. Every day there was a rosh beis av. So the person who was in charge of 2 weeks was kaidem to the one who was only in charge of 1 day. Rosh beis av kaidem l'kayin hedit, and the rosh beis av gets precedence over a regular kayin. Yibaylu inyan tumah. Skan. Until now we've been talking about in lahachayos. To save them. L'inyan Tumah legabi Tumah, which we're going to explain what that means. Skan and Mashuach Mulchama ezamehen kaidem. Who comes first between the Skan and the Mashuach Mulchama? We had said before the Mashuach Mulchama comes earlier. Legabi lahachayes. What is it in legabi Tumah? Amar Zutra Beidu Nachman Toshma Detanya. Skan and Mashuach Mulchama shahayu mahalcha mederach. They were going on the way. Upogo meis mitzvah. And they came across a meis mitzvah. So that's how Tumah gets into it. Which one has to be mitam himself? Mutav sheyitma mashuach mulchama val yitma skan. Even though we said before that the mashuach mulchama has precedence over the skan, legabi being mitam himself, the mashuach mulchama is mitam himself faster than the skan. Sheim ya'ara by psul the kohen gadol nichnas the skan mishamish tachtav. The skan has to be available to take the place of the kohen gadol. The mashuach mulchama doesn't have that problem. So therefore, even though we say lahachayos to go first, legabi Tumah, the skan has precedence. That general rule is true. Lahachayos, but legabi Tumah is different. Dr. Mishnah. Kain kaidem levi Yisrael lemamzer mamzer nesin leger v'ger le'eved meshucher. Kain comes before a Levi comes before Yisrael comes before a Mamzer, and a Mamzer comes before a Nesin. Nesin is somebody, one of the people who fooled Yeshua and got themselves to be Meguyer. So their descendants there's a blot on their genealogy. On a Nesin Leger, a Nesin has precedence over a current Ger, someone who just now is Meguyer. Gemara will explain why. And a ger comes before a freed slave. This is when they all are equal. If there's a mamzer who's a Talmud Chacham, and the Kohen Gadol is Amaretz, mamzer Talmud Chacham, Kohen Gadol Amaretz. The one who's a Talmud Chacham, even if he would be lower down on the chain, he takes precedence. Zak the Gemara. Kohen Koydem Levi. Where do we get that? Kohen comes before Levi. Shenem b'nei Amram, Aaron u'Moshe. Vayavdil Aaron lahakav lakdishay kodesh kadoshim. That the sons of Amram were Aaron and Moshe. So Moshe was children with Leviim, Aaron's children with Kehanim, and it says that Rebbeinu Shalom separated Aaron to make him Kaddish, like we said, Kaddish, Kedusha, and we said that something that's Tamid goes first, and we also said whatever's Kaddish, so we see that a Kohen is Kaddish. Levi Kaddish Yisrael, Shenem Beisahi Hivdil Hashem Es Shevet HaLevi B'toich B'nei Yisrael. That the Levi was also separated to be ahead of Klal Yisrael. Yisrael Koydem LaMamzer Zem Miyuchas V'Zein Miyuchas. A Mamzer is not Miyuchas. He can't join the general body of Klal Yisrael. Mamzer kaidem l'nesin. Why does a mamzer come before nesin? Zeh mitipa ksherev, zeh ba mitipa psula. A nesin was his parents were nesinim, and their parents were nesinim. So Masha Enkin Ger, his parents were not Jewish, so therefore the nesin gets kadima. Nesin kaidem leger.
You're talking about a mamzer.
Sorry, a mamzer. A mamzer, right? A mamzer is comes before him because his parents were Jewish, and the sin, his parents were not also had the same soul that he had. Masha'inkin a mamzer, even though his parents shouldn't have been, they were over on Yisurim, obviously, but they were Jewish. They were not. They had no soul in them. So therefore, he has kadima. The sin kain mager zeh gadol imanu b'kedusha v'zeh gadol imanu b'kedusha. A ger comes before a sin. The sin comes before a ger because the sin's parents were part of Klal Yisrael to the extent they are, but a ger was brought up amongst the goyim. Ger kaidim le'evin meshucher zeh b'chlal ara v'zeh lo b'chlal ara. Avadim are the descendants of Canaan. Canaan was Ar, so he inherited that cursed state. Amasai bisman shekul and shavan. The Mishnah says this is all when they're equal. Minani, but if one of them is a Talmud Chacham, he has precedence. Like the Mar Minani Mili, where does it come from? Amaracha, Reb Chanina, the Amakra, Yikarahim, Pnim, the Torah says about Torah that it's more precious than Pninim, than jewels. But we say, Mikayin Gadol, Shenichnis, Lefnai, V'Lifnim. We say Pninim means that they go, that the Kayin Gadol goes Lefnai, V'Lifnim. Someone who's a Talmud Chacham has precedence over him. Tanya, Shimri Chayoyim, V'Dinu Sheyakdim Eved Meshuchel Leger. Really, a freed slave should go before Gersh. Is that Gadol Iman of Kedusha? Is that like Gadol Iman of Kedusha? Because a Evet Kanani, normally it's passed down from people buy and sell their avadim, but the avadim have children, they remain avadim. So they were brought up amongst Klal Yisrael. Since avadim are cursed, they don't get precedence over a ger. Why are people comfortable marrying a gearis and they don't want to marry a freed slave? Because, like we said, the slaves were brought up in kedusha. The same thing. Another reason is because avadim, a shifcha, while she's an avid, she has no expectations of ever becoming free. So she's mafka herself liznus. She has no future. But someone who's a guy, they might have in mind that someday they'll be Megayer, so they can guard themselves. Why is it that a dog recognizes its master and a cat does not? This is since they were asking questions. I think that's what was going on. I'm not really sure. I don't know how we got onto this. Yeah, there's also another thing that Talmidim asked Rebbe Lazar. That's why does the dog recognize its master and the cat doesn't? So he says, Mishkach, someone who eats from food that was nibbled on by a rodent, he forgets what he learned. A cat who eats the rodent itself, it certainly will forget whatever it knows, and therefore it forgets who its master is. Why is that? Why is the achbar, the rodent, the mouse, the lowest of all creatures? Neshasur and ra, because they're inherently bad. Mahi, what's bad about them? Rava mafilu glimi gaitzi, that they even eat clothing which they get nothing out of it. They chew on it and ruin it. Papa mafilu shufza mara gaitzi, they even chew on the handle of a shovel. They also get nothing out of it and they just ruin things. So therefore they're the lowest of the low. So now once we discuss things that eating what a mouse ate from causes forgetfulness, now we're going to talk about different things that cause forgetfulness and what causes people to remember things. There are five things that cause someone to forget what he learned. Someone who eats from what, like we just said, what a rodent ate from. And from what a cat ate from, I guess because the cat eats the mice. If you eat the heart of an animal. Someone who often eats olives. And you eat leftover water after someone washed with it. And someone who washes his hands one on top of the other. Puts his feet, one on top of the other, he washes them together. Someone who sleeps with his clothing under his head. So these are five things that cause people to forget. And there are five things that cause a person to remember, to recall what he learned. Pas pechamim, bread that was made on the coals, that it's still hot. And certainly to eat the coals themselves. I don't know how you eat coals. Someone who eats a slightly roasted egg, without salt. And eating shemen zayis. Eating shemen zayis helps you remember. I'm sorry. Someone who drinks wine and I guess smells psamim. And you eat the leftover water from baking. After they would knead, I guess water would come out of it. These things are helpful for shircha. Dipping your finger in salt and eating it. We said that someone who eats olive oil as opposed to olives helps him for shircha. Just like eating olives causes you forget 70 years of learning. The shemen zayis brings back the limit of 70 years. Someone who is used to yayin and psam. He says that wine and smelling cause a person to be smart. Dipping his finger in salt. He said, you think it's talking about when you dip one finger in salt. Yehuda says one finger, Rabbi Yossi says two fingers. The simon is kmitza. When a person does a kmitza, he puts down this finger, so he leaves over one and two. So this is a reminder of what the machlokes is, whether it's one or two fingers you should dip into the salt. There are five things that make it difficult to learn. Someone who goes under the lead, the rope that's used to lead a camel. And certainly if you go underneath a camel itself. Good morning, Dovi. We're on Yud Gimel on the bays, about 10 lines up in the narrow lines. Someone who goes between two gemalim. A man who goes between two women. Isha, and a woman who passes between two men. Someone who goes near the smell of a dead animal. Someone who goes under a bridge that hasn't had water pass under it for 40 days. You eat bread that wasn't fully baked. Someone who eats, it seems like the way Rashi describes it, drinks like soup directly from the ladle. Instead of putting it into a bowl, he drinks it directly from the ladle that took it from the pot. So you drink from a stream of water that goes through a graveyard. Someone who looks at the face of a mace, of a corpse. Also reading the letters on a gravestone. So you're right. So you're looking like that's a normal thing to do. Supposedly, I saw that they said maybe that putting the stones, the reason why you put the stones, that somehow counteracts this. So it's hard to say exactly what that is. Tanaraban. Kishanasi. Now we're going to talk about Kishanasi nichnas. When the Nasi comes into the Beis HaMedrash, everyone stands up for him. And no one sits down until he tells them to sit down. So the Nasi gets the biggest cover that everyone stands up, and they can't sit down until he says so. The Abbezin doesn't get quite as much covered. They make two rows that he walks in between until he sits down, but it's not the whole base medrash. When the Chacham, which means the Chacham, the biggest Talmud Chacham, comes in, they stand up within Dalet Amos of him, but when he passes by, when he's Dalet Amos away, then they could sit down. B'nei Chacham v'Talmidei Chachamim, the children of the Chachamim, and I'm not sure if it means the sons of Talmidei Chacham or it means the Talmidim of Chacham. I think it means the B'nei Chachamim means like we just said, the biggest, the Gadol Hadar, and the Talmidei Chacham, regular Talmidei Chacham, Bisman Shirabim Tzricha Lahem, when they're needed, when these children of the Talmidei Chacham are needed, Mafsiyan al Roshei Ha'am, they can even pass over when they're going into the base medrash. They can go over people's heads. Normally, that's disrespectful, but when they're needed for to assist their parents, so then it's allowed. Yotzel L'Torich, when someone has to leave the base medrash, one of the participants has to leave to go to the bathroom. He can go out and he could go back to his place. The children of Talmidei Chachamim that were appointed to keep things in order in the base medrash, if they're old enough to understand what the father's drasha is, they can go sit in front of their fathers with their backs to everyone else. But when they're not able to listen, so they have to watch their fathers in order to hear what they're saying. But when they're not old enough to really listen to the Dvar Torah, they have to face them. It's disrespectful for them to keep their backs to everyone else. Similarly, when there's a meal, a suda, and the Talmidei Chacham are there, and the Gadol Hadar is there, the children get a separate table next to their fathers. We said before that when someone has to go out to go to the bathroom, they can go out and they can come back in and return to their seat. That's only if they went to urinate. But if they have to go to defecate, he can't come back because it's his fault. He should have gone to the bathroom before the shir. You're not allowed to disrupt the shir for this. That was his fault. Person should make sure when he wakes up, when he goes to sleep, to relieve himself, in order that in those days, when you in order to properly go to the bathroom, you had to go out, basically out of the town. You had to take a long break. So a person should make sure that doesn't have to do that during the day when he's busy. But now that everyone has all kinds of stomach issues, I feel a dalam nami. You could even return to the Beis HaMedrash after going to the bathroom for g'daylim, because everyone is subject to that. They're not able to regulate themselves properly. He says in the Beis HaMishta also we make them, we give the children a separate table near their fathers. This is only when their fathers are alive and if their fathers are there. This previous Gemara where we talked about who gets precedence over who, this all happened because of a Ma'aser of Rav Shimon Gamliel, which we're going to say, which will take us pretty much to the end of the parak. Rav Shimon Gamliel Nasi. Rav Shimon Gamliel was a Nasi. Rav Meir Chacham. Rav Meir was the Gadol Hadar in learning. Rav Nasan Av Bezin. Rav Nasan was the Av Bezin. Ki have Rav Shimon Gamliel Hasam. When Rav Shimon Gamliel was there, have a kaimi kuli alma mekameh. Everyone would stand up for him. Ki have a Aili Rav Meir. Rav Nasan have a kaimi kuli alma mekameh. And everyone would also stand up for the Gadol Hadar, or the Rosh Hashiva, whatever, and the Av Bezdin. I'm the Nasi. There has to be some recognition that I am on top. Talking ha masnisa. So he made the takanas of this Mishnah where we differentiate where the Nasi gets more people standing up for him than the Chacham and the Abbezdin. Hahu Yuma, have a Remeir, Reb Nasan Hassam. Remeir of Nasan happened not to be there on the day that Rishim Gamliel instituted this takana. Lamach kiyasu, the next day when they came, Chazud like kamum kamai k'deragila milsa. They saw that no one was getting up the way it used to be. Everyone got up for them, and now they did only a partial getting up. Amri mai hai. They asked, what is this that no one's standing up? Or they're not standing up the way they used to. Amalahu, hachi tikun Rishim Gamliel. This is the takana of Rishim Gamliel. Amli Remeir Reb Nasan. Remeir said to Reb Nasan, Anoch chacham v'at Abbezdin. I'm a chacham, I'm the chacham, and you're the Abbezdin. Niskin milsa kiladidan kiladidan. Let's make something that we should to fix this problem. My navid lay. What are we going to do? Name a lay goli uksin the less lay. We'll ask him questions in Mesechta's uksin that they knew Rav Shimon Gamliel was not so well acquainted with it. Bekivin de lay gomer, and since he hasn't learned it, we'll say he'll be caught. Name a lay mi amal gvurz Hashem yashmiya kol tilosei. Lemino amal gvurz Hashem. Who should be the one to expound on the wonder on the strength on the gvura of Hashem? Misha yachal hashmiya kol tilosei. It's going to be only the one who can say all of his learning, the one who knows everything. And since you're deficient in learning uksin, navrei. So they're going to take away Rav Shimon Gamliel. They're going to take him out from the Nesias. So he said, you'll move up to be Nasi, and I'll move up to be Abbezdin. Shamina Rav Yaakov ben Karshi. Rav Yaakov ben Karshi heard the plotting of Rav Nasan and Rameir. It's going to be a busha for Rav Shimon Gamliel. He stood. This Rav Yaakov ben Karshi sat on the opposite side of the place where Rav Shimon Gamliel was sitting. Ilosei Rav Shimon Gamliel. Pashat Garas Vitana Garas. He kept on learning uksin over and over and reviewing it. Garas Pashat Garas Vitana Garas Vitana. He started to review it over. Amin Mai Dekama. So Rav Shimon Gamliel said, "What is it? Why is he all of a sudden learning uksin that I should hear it right near me?" Maybe there's something going on in the base medrash that I have to be prepared for. Yoav daite begarsa. He's set his mind to it and he learned uksin. So all of a sudden, Remeir and Reb Nasan said, "Okay, let's learn uksin." Pasach v'yamar. So he started and he said the whole shir on uksin. Pasach the ukim amalhu. After he finished, he said to them, Eloi gamirna kisaftina. If I wouldn't have learned it, you would have embarrassed me. So he said that you're kicked out of the base medrash. So one day, so now Remeir of Nasan was sitting outside the base medrash. They would write their questions on a piece of paper. They throw it into the base medrash. To have a mifrik, whatever questions they could answer the base medrash, they would answer. The loy havik mifrik, kasri piruke, b'shadu. Then Rav Nasan and Remeir would write the answers as well and throw it in. Amul Rav Yosi, Torah v'chutz v'anubim b'fnei. Rav Yosi said this is not right. That Remeir and Rav Nasan are outside; they know more than all of us, and we're inside. Amul Rav Shimon Gamliel na'linu. Okay, you can bring them back in. Miu niksinu. They have to get a knas. The loy nemru shmaitzim mishamayu. That we're not going to say over their Torah in their names. Asikul Remeir Acherim. So instead, whenever they would quote Remeir, they would say Acherim Aimrim. Well, Rav Nasan Yesh Aimrim. Rav Nasan became a Yesh Aimrim. Achvaluhu Bechalmayu Zilu Paisayu Rav Shimon Gamliel. Came a dream to Rav Nasan and Remeir to say you have to be Mephias Rav Shimon Gamliel. Rav Nasan went to be Mephias and Remeir didn't go. Something that comes in a dream does not affect anything. When Rav Nasan came in, Rav Shimon Gamliel said to him, he said, he chastised him, Rav Shimon Gamliel. He said, listen, your father was the leader in Bavel. So you yarshened his kamra, his belt. So that helped you to become a bezdin. Shavinach nami nasi. But does that make you also you should be the nasi? It doesn't get you that far. So he told him, hold your horses. Don't you were wrong to try to usurp me. Masni le Rebbe le Rav Shimon Brei. Acherim Oimrim. This is an example of. We said that they called her mayor Acherim. So he said Acherim Oimrim, meaning her mayor. Ilu haya tmura lo haya karav. This is talking about complicated din where somebody mixed up when he was separating Maisa Behema. When you separate Maisa Behema, you take the 10th animal to be the Maisa Behema. So the way you do it, you keep them, you put them in a pasture, in a paddock, and you take them out one by one. And this person got mixed up. He called the 9th the 10th, which so it wasn't really Maisa. And then the 10th, which was really the Maisa, he called the 11th. And then since he was mixed up, he changed it. So he, by mistake, called the 11th. Also, I'm sorry, he called the 9th the 10th. Then he realized he made a mistake, so he called the 10th one the 9th. Then he called the 11th the 10th. So they all get a certain level of kedusha. So the 11th animal, the kana is that it has to be brought as a shlomim. So Rameya says about that shlomim, he says it can be I'm sorry. Masile Rabbi Rav Shimon Brei Achem Ilu Haya Tmura Haya Kara. They're talking about whether this 11th animal that has a din that has to be a shlam, does it have a din tmura? Because in a certain sense, the rule of tmura is when someone tries to replace an animal that was already mukdash to be replaced with a second animal. And the din is once, and then as they both become aser. But the din is once an animal is a tmura, it can't become a tmura a second time. You can't exchange it for a third animal. That doesn't become tmura. And the question is, this 11th animal, does it have a din that it was already exchanged because originally it was not supposed to be kaddish and you made it into a shlamim? So does it have a din tmura? So Rameir says, iluhaya tmura lahaya karv. He says it wasn't kaddish at the beginning, so you're trying to exchange its kedusha, but it wasn't really kaddish. It was all a mistake. That was Rameir's din. So they asked him, who are you quoting? You're saying Acher Mamrim. That we're saying his Shita, obviously he's a Talmud Chacham, but you don't want to say his name. He said, this was Rav Shimon who was asking this. I'm sorry, Rebbe who was asking this. Rebbe was a descendant of Rav Shimon Gamliel. So he said, I'm saying over Rav Meir, who had tried to start up with your forefather, the Nasi, Rav Shimon Gamliel. Amalei, gam ahavtem gam sanesim gam kanasem kvar avda. He quotes from the pasuk in Koheles that says that everyone's loves and everyone's hates and everyone's jealousies, they've all passed. Everything is in the past, so we can get over it now. Amalei ha'ayiv tamu charvas lo netzach. He said he quoted a pasuk fakert, then from Tehillim that the oyev destroyed and the leftover ruins remain forever. So he said it's not so simple. You don't just say it's over what happened before. The effects remain even now. That he said that's only true if Rav Nosson or Rav Meir had accomplished what they set out to do. But Rav Nosson were not successful, so we can get over it. We don't have to continue calling him Acher. So he changed it to say not Acher, but rather Mishum Rav Meir. They said that it was a Tmura, would have been brought. Amar Rava Afilu Rebbe the Anvasahu, even Rebbe, who was a an onav, and he didn't want to start fights. Tana Amr Mishum Remeir, Amr Remeir Amr. He just said they said b'shem Remeir, but he wouldn't overturn the takana of Shimon Gamliel that he said that you shouldn't say Remeir's name. So instead of he didn't say Achem Meirun, but he said Mishum Remeir as opposed to saying Remeir said. Amr Rabbi Yochanan, Pliba Rav Shimon Gamliel v'Rabbanan. So machlekes between Rav Shimon Gamliel and the Rabbanan. Again, we're going to continue. This is a different Maisa relating to the question of who should be in charge. One says that a person who's Sinai, one who knows all of Torah, he has precedence to be the leader, and one says, no, the one who's sharper, the one who can overturn mountains, he is Adif. Rabbi Yosef exemplified the midah of Sinai, he knew everything. Rabbah, Oikar Harim, and Rabbah was very sharp. He could overturn anyone's analysis. Shachul Taman, Ezemehen Koidim. They asked who should be first between the Sinai and the Oikar Harim. Shachul who Sinai Adif. They said Rabbi Yosef, who is Sinai, that comes first. Amar Mar, Hakol Tzurchen Lamarichite. Everyone needs the owner of the wheat. That means to say that someone who's sharp, he has to have something to work with. So everyone has to come on to the person who knows the actual limud. Even if someone is a Oikar Harim, he doesn't. He still has to come on to the person who knows the limud. Va'afilu hachi lekabel Rabbi Yosef alayim melech. Afilu hachi lekabel Rabbi Yosef alayim. They still, Rabbi Yosef was not maskim to be the Reb, to be the Rosh Hashiva. He said that he wasn't worthy. B'makom Rabbah, whose analysis was more incisive. Molech Rabbah esem v'tarti shnid. So Rabbah became the Rosh Hashiva for 22 years. Bahadar Molech Rabbi Yosef. And then after Rabbah stopped being the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yosef took over. V'chol shnei de Molech Rabbah, all the years that Rabbah was the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yosef afilu umne lebeisa leichalach. Rabbi Yosef, as long as Rabbah was the Rosh Hashiva, he wouldn't even take a blood letter into his house, which was one of the prerogatives of the Rosh Hashiva. He didn't take even the smallest thing that showed him to be the equal of Rabbah. Abaye v'Rava v'Reb Zera v'Rabba bar Masna. These four Gedolim were sitting. Have a Yasvi, have a Tricha Reisha. They had to figure out, someone had to lead the shir. Ami called the Alma Milsa v'Lei Mafrech lahavi Reisha. They said, okay, we'll all say something. We'll say Shtikol Torah, and whoever can't be refuted, he'll lead the session. The Kulu Ifrich. So they all said Shtikol Torah, and they got slugged up. The Abaya le'ifrich, but they couldn't slug up Abaya. Chazia Rabba or Rabba Abaya, the Gavaresha. They said that, listen, they saw that Abaya was Taka, the Rebbeinu Shalom intended that he should be in charge. Amalei nachmeni psach ve'ema. So he said to him, you go ahead and speak. Ibalahu Reb Zera Rabba Masna Hai Minayod. If we said between Rava and Abaya that Abaya came first, what about the other two participants? Which one of them came first? Reb Zera Charef Umaksha. Reb Zera is very sharp in asking questions. Rabba Bar Masna Matsun Umasik. Rabba Bar Masna, his way of analysis, he learned through things slowly, and he was very organized. So which one comes first? Mai? Gemara Teku, we leave it as a question. We don't have a conclusion. Hadran Allah Chayim Mashiach, Zikul Mesechta Horayos, Slikalan, Hadran Allah, Seder Nezikin.
Oh, Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov.
Goyach.
What time tomorrow?
Tomorrow,